Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. So in this video we're going to talk about insights that can help you to discover your purpose in life. Now when we think of a purpose, we often think of something that is really meaningful to us, that we're good at, both naturally but also because we've put the graft in as well. And something that has a wider impact, something that also gives us joy, something that we flow with. So if this is the kind of purpose that you're seeking, I hope the insights in this video can be of help to you. So, how do we get from where we are with purpose? Perhaps we're wrestling with it, questioning it, having all sorts of wonderings about it that are kind of going in like circles. It's not really getting anywhere. One could be mired in self doubt, or perhaps you have an idea of what your purpose is, but you're not too sure how to break out of your current circumstances to make that a reality. Okay, I think a quick note on the practical level is there's always a small step that we can take towards what's meaningful, joyful, and impactful for us. So I might get onto the practicalities of that later on, some sort of considerations or tips that can help you. But first, let's look at this from an insight-based perspective. Okay, so I'm going to try and paint a picture of you to make sure that this resonates with you, and then the guidance should fit. So you're probably someone that is prone to introspecting quite a bit, analyzing things, why they happened the way they did, looking at your life and how it's progressed from the time you were born up to now. You're probably someone that feels there's something bigger, something wider out there. Something about the world is just knowledge, but also something about yourself that's expansive, something that can be more and do more, but in an aligned way. And you might have spent some time wrestling with this. You might also be feeling some self doubt or hopelessness in this process. Maybe you know a couple of people who have made their purpose manifest, people who have just done it, done something a bit unique. And they're killing it, and you're looking at them and you're thinking, how did you do this? How did you discover your path, and how did you walk that path as well? And you might be wondering, where is that sweet spot where you're naturally joyful doing this thing, this passion? You're naturally good at it. You find it meaningful, and it has an impact on others. And that's by and large because of the three prior points beforehand. So if this is you, I think that this can help. So I'm just going to reflect like a quote from Einstein to start with. And Einstein essentially said at some time or another, you can't solve a problem at the same level it was created at. And another quote from Einstein as well is that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result. And I think those two quotes go hand in hand. So when we're thinking about our purpose, and there's the hint there actually, thinking up here, that often leads to sort of circles and dead ends. But when we think about purpose the way it's been described here, it's clearly also a matter of heart and gut. There's something natural for us, something we're just wired to be and to do in this world. Gut. Heart. Something we value, find meaningful, take joy from. And then head. Something that we've spent time on developing a certain skill set, but also something that we're just also naturally good at from an intellectual standpoint. Sort of a bit like how different personality theories can explain people's various strengths and weaknesses depending on their inner wiring. We'll have a unique heart, value set, unique head, personality styles, ways of processing information, and also a unique gut as well, a unique sort of instinctual self, you know, a self that can get to the point. So, what I'm pointing to here then is that a lot of the reflection is happening here about your purpose. And the problem with the mind is that it understands things backwards. You have an experience, and then the mind, within its limits, there are certain limits to the thinking mind, then tries to understand this backwards, piece things together into a pattern, a kind of explanation for you. and and that's all well and good, but people get stuck at one of these three levels of head, heart, and gut. You know, they're not doing something. Their heart or their gut isn't in it. They're stuck in rumination and overthinking and self-doubt. There's some kind of disconnect between the three. If the heart says, or if the heart's feeling burdened by a belief of, I'm not good enough, for example, then that can feed into procrastination. So when it comes to purpose, it's not just something to think about, it's something to embody, you know. And the foundational level for realizing your purpose is to connect with your heart. And the reason for that is because our purpose is often, it's something going forward, and it's often contrasting with something in the other direction, backwards, our past. For me, the interplay between my inner wiring and the trauma that I've been through, or rather just conditioning. And conditioning is a bit of a tricky one because this is the main problem solver, actually, or problem causer, is that we get conditioned, and it's a bit like a radio or, say, a television set. Okay, there's a screen, it's a sort of processing unit that can do its thing, but depending on what radio waves you're tuning into, either way, TV or radio, then decides what gets displayed, played, and programmed onto the screen for the time being. And it's a bit like, you might be from the UK, but we've got something called Freeview, you know. It's TV without a license. You get like a limited set of channels, and they're basically quite rubbish. And conditioning's a bit like that. We get an impression of a certain bandwidth or sort of a certain number of channels, shows, or programs that we can tune into, and then we can mistake that with what's possible for us. We get boxed in other words. And a lot of these limits, including limiting beliefs, are unconscious. A person might think a thought like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not ready, I'm too broken, and they can think these thoughts, sure, and that is indicative of the sort of inner wounding that's making them arise. But it's the difference between like the roots in a garden versus the actual plants that show up above the surface. Those thoughts and those beliefs are like the plants, and the roots, sort of the deeper causes of the wounding, or what we call trauma, is underneath the surface. And the mind, being conscious, it either is reflecting things that we already know or are attuned to consciously, or it reflects the inner wounds through these thoughts, but they don't quite get to the root of the problem. So to realize your purpose in life is to understand that purpose is a multifaceted thing, and you can't do it just with your mind. Now, the question is, how do you actually engage your heart and your gut then to get deeper insight into your purpose to such an extent that you can embody it, that you are moved by it? Because once you tap into your purpose and what you value, what you really want, what you're really good at, as long as there's no resistance, again, these wounds, these traumas, it will just set its own course off, because it's what you're naturally attracted to anyway. It's the reason you're asking the question in the first place. It's because our purpose is a natural attractor field. It's sort of like a channel or a program that we're drawn to, even when we don't know what it is, even when we're searching in a rather confused way. We just don't know how to tune into that channel just yet because of this limited bandwidth, this conditioning, these beliefs, particularly the limiting ones. And that's where we really get into trouble. So to move beyond this state then requires an ingredient that is so simple, but for many people, they believe it is hard to cultivate. And that ingredient is presence and stillness. Why does that matter? Because when the mind's worrying about, we're not really being present or still. We're ziplining between the past and the future, figuring things out and living from here upwards. But to be still and present is to engage the whole of your body-mind complex onto anything you're drawing your attention on the outside. But first we need to connect with our body and get that integrated with our mind. Now, what does that mean? Because, a lot of people sort of believe like the body and the mind are fairly separate. And, there's a good amount of research, and it's quite popularly known at this point that there is an interplay between what we think and our physiological responses. If you think stressful thoughts, your body will produce cortisol, the stress hormone, for instance. There's a study where they took two groups of people and they got them both to drink the same milkshake, but the two groups were told two different things about this milkshake. The first group was told that this was a healthy milkshake, a nutritional one with vitamins and all the rest of it. And the other group were told that it was like a milkshake from a chain like McDonald's, say. And it's not very good, really. And they measured people's physiology afterwards, the way their body responded to these shakes, the same shakes afterwards. And they found that the people that were told the shake was a nutritional and healthy one had lower levels of cholesterol and blood pressure, and I believe blood sugar as well. But it goes to show the impact of this point, that there is an interplay between what is thought and what is felt and processed in the body. Now, what ultimately governs that interlinkage is that while in time, evolutionarily speaking, our bodies have developed, we've got genes, we have instincts, we've got cells and organs that perform all sorts of different functions for us. And the mind sort of came online later on, this self-consciousness, this ability to analyze, to draw on memory, to recognize patterns and all the rest of it, and navigate the world. And now civilization is the result of that. Now, the thing is that the two are tied in with each other. So while in time, mind comes into play later, and now that it has come into play, there is a synergy between the two. It's almost like consciousness and matter co-influence each other now. And this has been the case for a long time. So what we think can literally affect the physical reality, and especially the reality within our bodies. Now, I want to take this thought experiment a step further so that you recognize the importance of this, and so that your thinking is freed up to look at this in a more dynamic and integrated way. Now, if we just get to the level of pure fields of energy across the universe, you've got something like an electromagnetic field, and particles conform within that field. Now, just recall the law of thermodynamics, which says that energy just changes form. It doesn't get like created and destroyed, it just changes form. Okay? Now, within an electromagnetic field, particles generate within that field. So the field doesn't lose or gain energy, it just differentiates how that energy is expressed. Atomic physics is the same out of quantum physics. Once there's an observer in place, the field is differentiated and the waveform collapses into a concrete perception, something definite. It's not Schrodinger's cat, which may or may not be dead in this box until the box is opened. Okay, so everything is interconnected then. That's the whole basis, like universally and for us at a personal level, it's all interconnected. So the relationship that we have with our bodies, how tense our body is, how healthy our body is, and how still our mind is and is able to register sensations in the body, that all has an effect on your overall perception and processing of reality. Let's say that one more time. That has a big effect. This mind-body connection and the quality of that connection has a big impact on how we perceive and process reality. Within your body is your genes, which go back for eons of time, in essence, to such an extent that, we share 20% of our DNA with wheat, 50% with bananas and mosquitoes, a tremendous amount with, not for just a tiny slice, with apes, you know? So there's a lot of embodied and generational information within our body, which in synthesis with our self-consciousness can be tapped into. So this is where the gut comes in then, how you sort of know at a gut level what your purpose is, what you're really good at, what you are moved by. And then same with the heart as well, what you value, what little drop of significant but meaningful contribution you can make in your lifetime as part of this wider unfolding of humanity, the earth, and the universe. It's all interconnected. So that's why I really emphasize this, really, is because it can really help you to look at yourself more fluidly, to understand how your perception works more fluidly. So now I'm going to show you an exercise to help you to tune into your purpose by descending from this neck up paradigm that you could be stuck in for the time being, down to include the rest of your body, and as a result, your earthly and universal heritage as well. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is to basically get a bit of time for yourself, relaxed environment, no pressure, perhaps no one's around, and just put your hands over your chest, okay? Put your hands over your chest and just start breathing deeply and slowly for between the count of 5 to 8 seconds, and do this for 5 minutes. You are going to notice quite a nice physiological and mental change from this. You are in a place where you are in a stiller, a more receptive, and thus creative state of being. It's a bit like the Confucius quote, a bowl is most useful when it is empty. Same's true for your mind and its ability to create out of a sort of blank canvas, so to speak. If we can just slow down the whirring of this part of ourselves, then all of the workings can come together, integrate, and create something a little better, or a little more whole, rather. Okay, so as you've done this for 5 minutes or so, what I want you to do next is to connect with your heart then. Like, just feel it subtly, just close your eyes and put your intention and your attention onto your heart. And in that quiet, still space, ask your heart what a yes feels like. A yes can feel, it varies by people, but a yes can often feel like your shoulders are drawing back, tension is decreasing, and you sort of feel like a bit of an expansive sense, like some kind of like doors are opening, that kind of thing. And then ask your heart after this what a no means. So no might be the opposite, more like a kind of shoulders feel like coming together. It's more of like a sort of feeling, a closing feeling. And discover what yes or no is for your heart. And as a quick fact, your heart, as well as your gut, are brains. They have big clusters of neurons in them that process information, not in such a wordy and information saturated way as our brain does, but just in a kind of faster, more intuitive way. Okay. Just allow me to take a sip of my drink. Okay, so you know what yes or no is from your heart's perspective. Now you can invite your heart to give you an answer about what your purpose is, or to just get, dig a little deeper, just bit by bit, to what your purpose is by asking your heart questions like, what do I truly value? What do I truly want? And you can even just outright ask, what could my purpose be? And just see what guidance you get. And also you can celebrate that this is a deeper tool for connecting with yourself and understanding the world more broadly. To not just get head's input, but also heart's input. And you can repeat the same process then for your gut as well. Put your hands over your gut, get into a deep, relaxed space. Focus on your gut and await an intuitive sense that you're connected with it. And same again, you can also ask it questions about a certain theme or topic. And then you've got 3 levels of guidance then from your brain, your heart, and your gut. And that can help you to get deeper into what your purpose is, to just differentiate the 3 more fully. The head's gift or wisdom is creativity, insight. And the heart is of compassion and relating. That's the wisdom of the heart, including relating with ourselves and compassion for ourselves. And the gut is to do with core instinctive identity and also the gift of courage. A lot of things do not happen because of the gut. The gut, energetically speaking, being clogged up, unable to digest and process something. And then as a result, our kind of outer life, if you allow the metaphor, gets a little constipated or stuck, you know. And likewise, the opposite extreme, you know, we're all over the place. It's very like scattered. There's a lack of staying power with things, constant procrastination. A lot of these issues are to do with the heart and the gut. And it's not just a head thing. Going back to Einstein, we can't solve a thinking problem which has come from the mind. It needs to be part of a more integrated whole, you know, a synthesis which allows a person to get to another level of perception, another level of self-understanding, and from there to make appropriate changes in their lives that benefit themselves and other people. I just wondering if there's anything else to add on the topic of purpose. Purpose is something as well that starts with you a great deal. I know it sounds obvious, but I'm talking about brass tacks, basic stuff. Because if you love yourself, you can flow more with life and with less resistance. You won't feel as much resistance to the things that are currently holding your purpose back, things that are in the shadows, that are in the dark, things that you're at least somewhat conscious of but don't know how to integrate and get past. Self-love will help you to have the openness needed to discover and then realize your purpose. So you can simply ask yourself, how am I denying myself and not loving myself? How am I being overly critical? Am I holding myself to rigid and intense standards that are not really serving me and other people? Do I do things to keep up relationships and images of myself that make me feel good and secure, but when those things aren't in place, when that person I'm codependent with isn't there, or when a person sees me as this way but not as the way that I want to, what are those things that when they're taken from me, they end up leaving me feel empty, angry, or resentful, for instance? So much of purpose and living a great life comes down to self-love, and self-love opens up your being to the possibilities of life, the wholer ones, the good ones, the more creative ones that serve you better, and again, other people. So just a really important note to really make sure you love yourself, and then to develop love for yourself is a multifaceted and multi-leveled thing, because it all starts with the body. You know, it's quite hard to get to a state that is more constructive and healthy for us if we're weighed down by tensions in the body, a lot of stress that is accumulated, or if we're not eating very well, or we're not sleeping too great. We're using electronics a lot, you know, scrolling through, you know, social media for like a good few hours a day, you know, and then, you know, that's playing around with our neurotransmitter systems as well, peaks and valleys of dopamine. Same again with sugar intake, peaks and then crashes. If we're not moving our body much, I'm just pointing to a wide array of different things that relate to the body, its care, its harmony, and its balance. Because when the body's balanced and harmonious, it helps the mind to be balanced and harmonious. And likewise, a balanced and harmonious mind can have an input that affects the general state and feeling quality of your body as you experience it. But to start with, self-love then begins with looking after your body and gradually taking the steps to build up habits that serve you, habits that you're happy to keep, instead of limiting ones that constrain the possibilities of your life, but they give some kind of nice payoff that helps you to feel comfortable or at ease. And it's worth asking what those things are. Going up to the other level then of emotions, why do we do the things that we do for an emotional payoff? If you think about it, emotions are so deep because they shape logic, they shape purposes and visions. Emotions are within logical systems and thoughts, but they're also all around them. An emotion will condition your intention towards a situation or a person, and out of that then the emotion shapes and narrows what you can do with that object of your intention, and that intention again is charged with an emotion. So you can extend that question then to things like, why do I have these habits relating to do with my body, my relationships, my self-beliefs and thoughts and what I'm doing and so on. So that you can dig a little deeper, and again, being still and getting into a quiet and balanced state with that exercise I told you about earlier can be extremely helpful for this. And so with our emotions, we can then come to understand why we do the things that we do. And once we understand and accept those emotional reasons and how they connect perhaps with memories or experiences from our past, we're in a much better place then to transmute those emotions and integrate them back into us, into a more whole and interconnected state with the rest of us, rather than sort of certain emotions or beliefs lingering under the surface in a sort of psychic basement, showing up when they need to, and then derailing your plans and so on and so forth. So the emotional layer is another important one, and I would just recommend looking at shadow work, inner child work, and meditation as just 3 example practices to help with that layer of the self-love journey, because everything opens up out of self-love, and it's something worth getting serious about. It's not just a thought in your head. Self-love is something that you can truly embody and feel, such that self-compassion and compassion for others is a habit of being. It's your default. It becomes your go-to. You're stiller and more peaceful for longer. There's serious value in this work. And then the next layer then to do with self-love is to do with thought and beliefs. A lot of people get stuck here where they're kind of like trying to cancel a negative thought with a positive one, and by oscillating the tension between those two opposing views, the tension just gets amplified, a bit like the positive and negative charges of a battery. It keeps that field sustained. Rather, it's better to, when you have negative thoughts, to notice them and just accept that they happened. And then rather than combating the thought with a directly oppositional thought, you can just think something kinder for yourself. Like, I choose to feel worthy. I acknowledge that I'm good, or I acknowledge my intelligence, whatever it might be. And then with that acceptance, that ability to just look rather than to fight with negative thoughts and beliefs, but to again apply understanding to them, to contextualize them and then reframe them appropriately into something that is more, that acknowledges your past and these beliefs, but transcends and includes them into a wider picture. I had come to believe, for example, that I wasn't good enough, because of XYZ experiences in schools, and that taught me this belief. And then I used this belief to help myself to feel comfortable, to keep myself in a comfort zone so that I would not have to go through experiences where I would have to relive that feeling of worthlessness. Worthlessness? I'm not sure if I said that right then. But oh well. And so, but now understanding this, I now choose to understand and see that I'm more than these past experiences, and that I am worthy, and that I've contributed worth and value to the world. So this is just one example of this mental recontextualization, understanding how those thoughts and beliefs came to be, recontextualizing and qualifying them, and then choosing something that's more whole, harmonious, balanced, and better for you. Okay. So, by working on these layers, then, which correspond roughly to gut, heart, and head, you can integrate the whole of your being together so that you open up, and your purpose is something that will pretty much just sort of disclose itself to you from the inside in some way, shape, or form. There's many different avenues and routes, particular experiences that people have that get them to that point. But making yourself and self-love a purpose in the absence of a defined purpose for now is as good a purpose as any, really. So I'd warmly encourage you to look into that and to use these tools to help you on your journey. As a final note, I think that the practicalities of purpose have been looked at to a good extent now that I think of it here. There's so many ways that our lives work and how our purposes could be, what fields they relate to, art, business, communication, many different fields. So I hope that this has been helpful to you on your journey. And if this has been helpful, I'd love to hear from you. It really gets my fire going to see the impact that I have on people's lives with my words. So if this has resonated, I'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much again for watching as well. Have a good day.